Welcome to Healthy Heart. This is Dr. Isaac OPOKU-ASARE. Thank you very much for joining me this evening for another discussion about cardiovascular health. I believe that this program that is coming to you will go a long way to help you if you will apply some of the principles that you hear from us. These are things that affect us every day, especially what we're going to talk about. I think that it affects everybody in this world. If not, at least in the United States, if you ever buy food from any store or shop that is processed one way or the other, this particular topic is very interesting and important to you. We'll also encourage you that invite people and send the link and the information that we're giving to you to other people who can also join us and be able to learn. The good book says, freely you have received and therefore freely give. What we are doing here is supposed to help you to be able to do the things that you are doing and enjoy them. Because if you have a good heart, which comes in two forms, good physical heart and a good spiritual heart, right? The unseen heart. If you have those ones, life is good. Today, the discussions will be on food labels, whether it is portion versus serving size. Portion and serving size. Why is that important? Because a few years ago, I wasn't paying attention to this issue at all. But I realized that there is a lot of confusion about it. It's not because what is there is confusing, but we've not paid attention to it, and that's what makes it confusing. But hopefully, by the end of this program, we'll be able to sort of address that. So we'll be talking about portion size versus serving size, which is part of food label actually, and then we'll talk about the other components of food label, and then finally there are some few controversies about COVID-19, and our goal is to be able to talk about that, and hopefully that will go a long way to help you. So let us start with food label. Any packaged food in the United States, at least, and in most parts of the developed world, now there is a requirement for them to put a label on it indicating the energy content as well as the micronutrients in the food. And this is important because you don't want to put something in your mouth without knowing how much is going into your mouth or what you are taking. Because my definition of food is something that you put into your mouth that goes into your system that helps you to grow. If you have to eat and then take a medicine for it, then it's a problem. So you should not eat it at all. And that is why you need to be able to read the labels on the food that you are buying. Whenever you go anywhere and you are buying any food, please look at the food label and know what you are putting into your system. Because based on your problems, the problems that you have in terms of your health, that particular food may not be good for you. And that is why you have to read the food labels. So the first question we are answering is, why do I need to read the food label? You need to read it because you need to know what you are getting. And sometimes there is this so-called drinks and all these things that are there, and people just consume them with the knowledge that it is healthy. But if you carefully look at the labels, you realize that they may not be very healthy for you. And that will lead to more problems than answers for you. And that is why you need to look at it. But now, even restaurants, when you go to restaurants now on their menu, they are supposed, most restaurants that I go to, on the menu of those restaurants, right, they now tell you how much calorie it is in that food, you know. I mean, one of the places that I go to, I love this, it's a chicken preparation, let me put it that way. And the calorie amount is, I looked at the label, and the calorie over there is 1,200, right? My total calorie in a day should be 2,000. And if I consume that one, I have to make sure that I don't and that means that does not include the drink that they are giving to me. So when I go to this particular restaurant, they will give you bread, and they will give you salad. They give you bread and salad before the food comes. So you need to know what is in the salad. You need to know what is in the bread. So that the main meal itself is 1,200, excluding the bread and excluding the salad. And boy, if I add all those things, one meal, I already have my 2,000 calories. I'm done. Right? So if I do that 3 times in a day, which is what is happening in the United States, most people consume more calories than they need. Is because they don't read the food labels. So whether you are in a restaurant, whether you're in a grocery shop, wherever you are, and let me add this, when you bring the labels home and you are preparing the food, when you are preparing the food and you pick that particular thing that you're going to use to prepare your food at home, look at all the contents of it. You know, sometimes at home we are trying to prepare food, and then in trying to prepare the food, we added salt. And I realized that you cannot eat the food any longer. Not knowing that if we had read the food labels, we would have realized the salt content was already too high. And therefore, it was unnecessary for us to add what? Salt to it. And that is why processed food, I want to repeat it, especially processed meat, has got a ton of salt in them. And that is why you need to be careful. So, right from the hot dogs to anything that you want, there is a label on them. And that is why this topic is important for everybody. We will encourage you to call somebody or share this with people. And by doing that, you are going to take care of yourself, right? If you go to your doctor and your doctor gives you medicine, you want to ask the doctor, what is it for? And what are some of the side effects of this medication? In a similar manner, the food that you are consuming, you need to know that. So let us go to the food labels. There are 5 components of the food label, and that is what we're going to lay emphasis on. And then we're going to talk about the trips, that we're going to talk about the things that may trip you, or the tricks that people use to either hide or, let me say, conceal what is what they are trying to sell to you. So the number 1 is the topic for today: portion size or serving size. So whenever you pick any food, or whether it's hot dog or whether it's cereal or no matter what it is, you're going to see something that they've written on it. They call it serving size. Serving size is the amount that people generally eat. That is the serving size. It is not what is recommended for you to eat. I want to repeat this over and over. Serving size is what people generally eat pertaining to that food that you are picking up. So that is the serving size. And the serving size should come in the form of a cup or in the form of a gram. That's it. So if you pick that orange juice, and the orange juice has a serving size, the serving size is how much generally people would drink. And that may be half a cup or a full cup, and they'll put the grams to it. So let me add one more time. I'm repeating this. It does not mean that you have to consume that amount, but that is how much people consume. Okay. Now, in the area, that first portion, if you look at it carefully, they will write the number of servings per container. So, the serving size is 1 cup, but that particular container or that particular bottle of orange juice may have 8 servings. So, if you drink 4 cups, or if you drink half of that bottle, okay, a lot of people will feel good about this. Oh, I didn't drink the whole bottle, I just drank half. That is not good idea at all. I drank only a third of it. That is not good. Rather, look at the number of servings in that cup. Because if there are 8 servings in that particular bottle of orange juice or apple juice or anything that you are drinking out there, or the food that you are eating, if it had 8 servings and you consume half of that particular food or that particular bottle, you ended up consuming 4 servings, because that bottle contained what? 8 servings. And if you consume the whole bottle, which we can easily do, that means that you've ended up eating what? 8 servings. Okay. So what is the big deal about it? This is an issue about portion size. Portion versus 7. So the 7 is what they will tell you that, okay, this is how much people consume. That is a 7 size. Generally people consume. That's what they will tell you. And when they tell you that, how much you consume now becomes your portion. So if you ended up consuming half of that bottle of orange juice, or half of that water, half of that meatloaf, or half of that bread, then what happened is that your portion size was actually 4 servings. And this is the difference here. The serving size is set up by the manufacturer. That I'm telling you, I'm the manufacturer. I'm telling you that generally this is how many people consume. But the portion size is determined by you. You determine how much you are going to consume. And that is where we have a problem. So you can no longer go back and blame the manufacturer again, because he told you the serving size. But you decided to pick your portion size in terms of consuming the number of servings in that particular container. This is what we know in America. Serving size has not increased. The serving size has been the same. But the portion size in the United States of America has increased. Why? Because people are consuming more and more and more servings per whatever is given to them. And sometimes what people do not understand is that the fact that you go to restaurants and they serve you food, it does not mean that the food that they are giving to you is your serving size. The food that they give to you in a restaurant that you are eating is your portion size, because that is not the recommended amount. So you need to make a decision that if they've given you food, which is in a restaurant or wherever you go to, that food is your portion size. And you have to make a decision what is going to be the amount that you're going to consume. So you can decide that you're going to eat half of it. If you eat half of it, then at the end of the day, that is that is the decision that you have made. And that is how much you have consumed, and that is your portion size. So your portion size is how much you end up eating. And your serving size is what most people eat. And our goal is to make sure that you control your portion size based on the knowledge that you get from your serving size. So that is the first thing that we'll look at. So number 1, your serving size. And number 2, your portion size is how much of the servings you decide to take in. And that is under your control. And you have to make that decision. And my recommendation is that any amount that you want to consume, make sure that it stays within the 2,000 calorie. People even believe that it should be 1,500. But the maximum of 2,000 calorie that you need. Now, let us go to the second portion. Then the second portion is calorie size. Let me put it this way. Anything that follows after the serving size is dependent on the serving. So it's not about the container. I'm repeating this. So when you pick that jar of orange juice and you see calorie, they've written calorie. And for instance, the calorie over there is 230. The calorie of 230 is not the calorie that is coming from what? That is coming from the whole bottle. No, 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 no. That 230 calorie that you see on the screen is the how much calorie you're going to get if you consume just 1 serving. And if that particular bottle of orange juice, or if that particular food contains 4 servings or 8 servings, and you consume the whole thing, that means that you should multiply the 230 by 8, and boy, we don't want to talk about it. That means that you are consuming almost 2,000 calories if you finish consuming that bottle. What people don't pay attention to is that when they see the 230, they think that a bottle contains what? 230. No. That 230 is for what? It's for the serving size. And therefore, if you want to know the total amount of calorie in that bottle, you should multiply the number of servings in that bottle with the calorie, and you have it. So there are two forms of food labels. We call them dual. So the reason why I like dual food labels is the fact that those ones, they have the amounts in terms of the energy and the nutrients in per serving, and then they will also give you per container. And those ones are good, so that if you decide to what, for instance, if you decide to eat all that is in the ice cream, you have ice cream. Ice cream is notorious for that, right? Because in one sitting you can finish off the whole ice cream. So some of the ice cream packages that will come to you, they will have it per what? Per container and per serving. So that if you consume all, then you should know how much what you are consuming. And I like the dual food labels better than the single food labels. The single food labels are per serving. And that is where our problem comes from. Because the guy thinks that, because they've written the 230, he saw the big, and you see how they make the calorie big. And they make the amount per serving small. And if you don't take care, that is where you're going to have a problem with. But if you want to know, I'm repeating this, if you want to know the total calorie that you are consuming per a container or per package that you have to multiply the calorie by the number of servings in that. And I know people that they drink the bottle, they call it, this is a powerful energy drink. And you look at it, the energy drink, it contains 250 per serving, and it contains what? It contains 4 servings. They take the bottle and they drink it in 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, you have already gained what? 1,000 calories into your system. And that's why this is important. You know, I've said a story of a patient of mine who wanted to go healthy. So he started drinking a particular drink. And I looked at it, it contained a little bit of caffeine. And then the amount of calorie was 250. And I think that particular bottle contained about either 6 or 4 servings. So at one sitting, that patient was consuming 1,000 to 1,500 calorie. And she drank it after she had eaten. So just imagine, her breakfast was about, probably 1,000 or probably 800 calories. And after that, she will drink that bottle of so-called, I don't know what she meant by that particular drink. And by drinking it, she ends up putting what? Another 1,500 to 1,000 calories on top of that. No wonder her blood sugar was through the roof. You see, we have an epidemic of diabetes in the world because people no longer look at these things. And that is why we are taking time. Please look at the food labels. Read them. And it's going to go a long way to help you. So that is number one. So that is the second point. The first thing is going to state the serving size. The second area on the food label is going to tell you the calorie per serving. I'm repeating that. Now let us come to the third component of it. What is the third component? The third component of any food label is what is in that food label, okay? And they intentionally ensure that they are going to put the things that is going to harm you first. The things that will cause problems to you, the things that you should not take, They're going to put them first. So you're going to see that it's called percentage daily. Percentage daily means in every serving, not the whole container. Let me put it that way. I want to lay emphasis on this is the biggest problem about food serving. Food labels, sorry. The problem with food labels is that it's per serving. But people don't go about eating per serving. People go about eating per the whole container. And that is why we have a problem. So they are going to write percentage. You're going to see something, percentage daily value. And they've written several percentages against the nutrients that they're going to talk about. So it means that it is based on a calculation that if you are eating 2,000 calorie diet, this is the percentage that you will need for that particular day. So per serving. But for instance, if you decide to eat 2 servings, instead of 1 cup, you end up drinking 2 cups. Or if it contains, if that particular thing contains 8 servings, and you end up eating half of that food that was presented to you, you've ended up eating 4 servings. So now the percentages that you see over here, you need to multiply them by what? By 4. We as human beings, we consume things per the package rather than per serving. But the food labels come in per serving. That's why you need to understand this concept. So the percentage here is per serving. So the first thing that they will put up is total fat. The first part of it is the things that you should try to reduce them. And because fats, as we've talked about, are highly dense, energy dense, your goal is to consume them in lower amounts. So they will put the total fat and they'll give you what? The grams in fat. Remember this, 1 gram of fat gives you what? 9 calories. 1 gram of carbohydrates gives you what? 4 calories. So under the fat, they will break it down into 2. And the reason why they are putting this emphasis is to help you make a good decision. So they will put down saturated fat. We have had a discussion on saturated fat. And they will put down the number of saturated fat. What are saturated fat? I don't want to belabor you. Saturated fat is the fat that we get from animals and cattle that we get from our dairy, right? These are the saturated fat, the cheese, the butter, right? And those that come from animals. These are what? The saturated fat. And the unsaturated fats are the ones that we get from plants, right? The extra virgin olive oil, the canola oil, all those nice oils out there. Those are the what? Those are the unsaturated fat. But almost every food label will show you this. Under the fat, they'll give you the saturated fat. And then once they give you the grams in the fat, they will tell you the percentage that you need for that day, right? And you're going to see, they're going to write 3%, 4%. The general rule is that in the food that in the component of the areas where you are not what? You are not supposed to have high amount, which is the fat and the carbohydrates. You want to eat food that has less than 5% fat. There is something they call the 5-20 rule. If the percentage in that particular food label per serving is less than 5% in terms of the fat, that is great. If it is more than 20%, that is a problem. And you need to be careful about it, right? So I'm going to tell you a story of Annie. I buy Annie. My family loves Annie. And they've written no cholesterol, which doesn't make sense. You don't expect to find cholesterol in Annie, right? So why are they writing it? It's a selling gimmick. Because they want you to get a feeling that, okay, there is no cholesterol, so it's all fine and good. That is not true. That is why we have the problems we have here. Fat is not our problem. Fat is not our only problem. It is fat and sugar that you need to combine them, manage them well, so that you avoid diabetes. In running away from the fat, we've ended up embracing the sugars, and that has led to problems. So they write no cholesterol on an Annie. I mean, what is the sense in that? But we're going to reveal all those secrets here so that you will understand these principles very well. So the first thing is the fat, and they will tell you the saturated fat. The second thing under the fat will be what? Trans fat. The trans fat, that is the bad fat. I am telling you, is the worst. You should, if you can, only eat food that has zero trans fat. Even if you see 1% trans fat, walk away from it. So, as for trans fat, I don't believe in the presence of the principle of 5%. No, 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 no. Under the trans fat, the principle here is what? Is zero. Saturated fat, they'll give you the percentage that you need for the day. That is okay. But remember that if the percentage for the day is 3%, 5%, you don't consume too much of it. So stay less than 5% under the fat area, especially saturated fat. I'm going to talk to you, we're going to talk about the tricks related to how they talk about these, they report these food labels. So, because you hear people saying that don't touch trans fats, right? Because people are telling you that the food manufacturers have been smarter about this. So instead of writing trans fat, they will give you the name partially hydrogenated fat. Partially hydrogenated fat is what? It's trans fat. But they've changed the name so that you may think that it doesn't contain trans fat. Partially hydrogenated fat is trans fat. And sometimes they will not put the word partially hydrogenated fat. They will put the word hydrogenated fats. That is also trans fat. So these are the secrets. These are the warnings that you should look for on a food label so that you don't end up consuming the trans fat, which you should avoid if you can. So under the fast section, you're going to see saturated fat. You're going to see what? You're going to see trans fat. And if there are other ones, they will report over there. Your goal is to stay low on the fat session. Then they go to the next thing. They talk about cholesterol. Not all fats are cholesterol, right? So you know, that is why the people who are selling the honey said that it does not contain cholesterol, which is bizarre. Why should they expect it, right? It doesn't make sense, but it is a marketing gimmick. They want you to consume the sugar so much that you end up with diabetes. No. Don't take it. Because fat can do the same damage as sugars do. So running away from the one does not save you. But you have to control the two. And that is why in food labeling, they put them in the same section. So they will talk about cholesterol. They will talk about the trans fat. They will talk about the saturated fat as much as possible. And I've yet to see any food label that doesn't contain that. Now let us go to the next one that they want you to reduce. So the first part is about the things you need to reduce. So the first part will be the fats. The second part is the sodium. They will tell you how much sodium is in it, right? So they will give you the number of sodium in terms of milligrams. Your goal is to consume less than 1,500 of sodium a day. That is how much. If you go to the shop, some of the processed meat, I'm not talking about, I say some of them, pick them up and see how much sodium in them. Some of them contain 500 and 600. I recently saw a vegetable drink. That vegetable drink contains 600 of what? 600 grams of sodium per can. And there's a big jar that has about, it's got 16 servings. If you finish consuming that bottle of that vegetable oil, that vegetable drink, you may end up just multiply 16 by what? 600. How much sodium you're going to consume. So they want you to reduce the sodium, your sodium intake. And that is why the sodium comes after the fast. So they're going to report that to you. Your goal is this. I'm repeating this. It's 1,500 if you can. 1,500 what? Milligrams of sodium. That should be your goal. And they'll give you the percentage. The percentage there is the percentage per serving. It's not a percentage per container. So based on how much how much servings you end up consuming, multiply that number of servings you consume with the sodium figure over here. So here the sodium is what? 100. If the sodium on the screen is 100, whatever it is, and you consume a number of servings, you consume 3 servings, then if the number here is 100, then you consume 300 of what? Of sodium. Your goal is to stay low on the sodium. So you want to go to less than 5% on the sodium. When it's close to 20% of the sodium, please move out. Or you have to consume less than 1 serving to ensure that your sodium is in the appropriate range. Right? Okay. So under the food label, there's a third thing that they want you to reduce. That is why food label is so important for all of us. And it's the carbohydrates, right? So the person that is selling the honey to you, they will tell you no cholesterol. But that is a deception. It's a marketing gimmick, which is not right. Because when you pick up the honey, it's going to say cholesterol is 0. But under the carbohydrates, that is what you need to look at. Because under the carbohydrates, first of all, it's going to give you the total amount of carbohydrates, which is not the biggest picture. Because under the carbohydrates, there are certain things that are good in the carbohydrates, and there are certain things that are bad. So they want you to, they are going to break it down. Remember in our discussion in carbohydrates, we said carbohydrates are made up of what? 3 classes: the sugars, the starch, and what? And the fiber. So they will give you the total amount of carbohydrates. But there is good carbohydrate and there is what? Bad carbohydrate. So they will break it down. So they will give you the total amount of carbohydrate in terms of grams and then percentages. But that is not what you should lay emphasis on. What you should lay emphasis on is the components of the carbohydrates. So the first part of it will be the fiber. Oh, you remember our discussion on fiber? You can go and look at it. Fiber is good. So when you look at the fiber, we want your fiber content to be high. We want the fiber content to be close to what? 20%. So it will be good for you if you have a high fiber content in terms of what you are going to eat. And after the fiber, they will come to the total sugars. That is why not all carbohydrates are the same. I said the components of the carbohydrates are what? Starch, fiber, and what? And sugar. So they will give you the fiber, which is what we want you to consume. Have a lot of that in your food. Then followed by the total sugar. So the total sugar is the sugars that was found originally in the food, and then the added sugar. So they will give you the total sugar, which if you pick honey, I tell you the honey may not contain what? It will never contain cholesterol. That is a given. The cholesterol in an honey is 0. But the sugar content is going to be high. And that is why when you are buying honey, you are not interested in what? You are not interested in the total calorie, and you're not interested in the cholesterol that is in it. But you are interested in the total amount of sugar per serving in that honey that you're buying. In that drink, that sports drink that you're doing, any form of drink, that orange juice, that apple juice, that vegetable juice, whatever you are doing, you are interested in the total sugars that are in them. Because it is the sugar that is going to lead to the diabetes. It is the sugar that together with the fat is going to lead to what? That is going to lead to the obesity and the related problems that come with it. So once they talk about the total sugar, then they will talk about the added sugar. So the added sugar is this. Is the amount of sugar that they added. That means that they went to pick sugar and put it into that drink to make it what? Sweeter. That is added sugar. So for instance, you get the honey, you get the orange juice, you get any juice that is out there. And they will tell you that the total sugar is what? The total sugar is 12 grams. And under the total sugar, they will tell you that the added sugar is 8 grams, or let's say the total sugar is 12 and the added sugar is 10 grams. Boy, that is bad. If the added sugar is no other but 99%, they are what? They are simple sugars that have been poured into that drink or something like that for you to drink, and they go fast into your system. So for instance, if your added sugar is 10 grams, 10 grams will give you, roughly in my calculation, 20% of what? 20% of your energy of the daily requirement per 7. And if the added sugar is giving you 20%, I will talk about the 5-20 rule. That is too high, and you really need to be careful. So in that situation, either you consume only 1/7 and move away from it, or you decide to eat less than 1/7. But if the total amount of fat, if your total sugars, and especially added sugar, is close to 20%, be careful about that food that you're putting into your system, because that may no longer serve the purpose of a food to make you healthy, but that may rather create problems for your health. And this is the danger. If possible, you want to go and eat, or you want to buy food that has got 0 added sugars. There is very little that people can do about natural occurring sugars. They can do something about it, but in terms of adding sugars to it, that is what we want to avoid. Why am I saying that? The data shows that Americans consume more than the required daily sugars and the added sugars. You can go and look at our topic on sugars, and you're going to understand this in a greater detail. But for today and for the discussion, pay attention under the carbohydrates to the added sugar, and you really want the added sugar to be 0. And the total amount of sugars to be closer to 5% rather than closer to 20%. Okay, and you want your diet, the dietary fiber in it to be closer to 20%. You want high fiber in your food, and you want low amount of sugars in what you eat. And that comes from reading the food label. From today onward, wherever you go, look at them, and it's going to help you. Now let us come to the things that they want you to have on the food label in good amounts, which is, they will talk about the vitamins, right? They will talk about vitamin D, they will talk about calcium, they will talk about iron, they will talk about potassium. This is the general concept here. There is something that we'll call the DASH diet. We'll have a discussion about the DASH diet, but the DASH diet is one of the diets we recommend for our patients who have hypertension. And the reason why we recommend the DASH diet is the fact that we know that food that is high in potassium and low in sodium is good for what? It's good for your blood pressure. Except people who have kidney problems and they have conditions that increase them to have high potassium. Generally, a diet that is high in potassium and low in what? In sodium is the recommended diet for people who have blood pressure. And that is some of the basis of the DASH diet. The DASH diet is DASH. And you see us recommending to our patients. So we would like you to consume food where the lower part of the nutrients are higher. They are closer to 20%. For instance, the vitamin D, the calcium, the iron, and the potassium in them are on the higher side rather than on the lower side. So that is the fourth portion of the food label. So number 1 of the food label, they're going to state the serving size. Number 2, they will state the calorie. Number 3 is they will state the food that you should the food nutrient that you should have lower in your system, which is the fat, the sodium, and the sugars. Then the fourth part of the food label is they're going to talk about the nutrient, the micronutrients, which is the vitamins, the potassium, which you need in higher amounts. So when you're looking at the lower one, you're looking at higher numbers. And when you're looking at the middle part, you're looking at low numbers. Then the last part is where they talk about the concentration. I mean, how the formulation. What is the basis? The basis is that all that we've written is based on the fact that if you end up eating 2,000 calorie diet per day, these are the recommendations, and they come from that. So these are the 5 parts of it. Let us go to some of the tricks about this, and then we can conclude the discussion here. Why is this important? It is important because, the dangers are in the sugars and in the fat, and we'll talk about the trans fat. So sometimes they are not going to put down the total sugars. No, they're going to put down things like maltose. They're going to put things like glucose. They're going to put things like fructose. You know why they are doing that? Because when they write the number sugar, you are going to see that it is the total amount of sugar. But they will not do that. They will rather write glucose or they will rather write fructose. But whether glucose, fructose, maltose, they are all what? Sugar. So whenever you see the toast, right, either glucose, maltose, all those ones, they stand for sugar. And their effect is the same thing that you're going to get if they write what? The total amount of sugar. So that is something that you need to watch out for in terms of the total amount of calorie. Because a lot of people say, oh, I didn't see any sugar on it. That is the sugar for you. The glucose and the fructose. So you need to pay attention to that. So let us finish by saying this. Whenever you're going to eat, look at the food label. But it is not just a serving size that is on the food label. The question you need to ask yourself is this: how many servings did I consume? I will encourage you to practice this for about 5 days. Be consistent about that. And then fully understand. And if you don't understand, you can get back to us about it. Always when you finish, before you are going to eat the food, ask yourself, how many servings am I going to consume? If you can answer that question, then you can appropriately or correctly determine how much calorie you took into your system, how much fat, how much sugars, and how much of the good nutrients that came to you. Our goal is that your sodium should be less than 1,500. Your fiber content should be closer to around 28 grams, right? And your total amount of sugars should be what? Should be less than 5%. Go with a simple rule. The good components that are on the fourth part, that is the lower section, should be closer to 20%. And the undesirable components, the fat, the sodium, and the sugars should be what? Lesser or closer to 5%. If you go with a simple 20 to 25 rule, it's going to help you to make the right choices. Because sometimes when you know what you've eaten in the morning in terms of the sodium, that will help you to make a good decision about what you need to eat in the evening, knowing that your breakfast or your lunch contain a higher amount of the undesirable segment. So you make a decision to lessen it in your next meal. And that is why reading food labels are important. I believe that this has gone a long way to help you. And it is said that practice makes what? Man perfect. I will encourage you to go back and read about it and read the labels and research about it, understand it more, apply it every day for yourself, for your family, for your children. And I know that as you do that, your food choices will be better, your health will be better, and your cardiovascular health will be at its best. Thank you very much for joining us today. Because of time, next time we'll give you the updates about COVID-19. Thanks to my producer, Mr. Blay, who does a wonderful job week in, week out. God bless you and God bless this nation.